Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another zombie review. And yeah, my last video of Romero's Survival of the Dead kind of bummed me out, so figured I'd do one that was really fun, that I really enjoy a lot. Return of the Living Dead. One of my all-time favorites, one of my favorite movies in general. Definitely one of my favorite 80s horror movies, definitely. I would put this up there with like Evil Dead 2 and Reanimator. Is one of those like horror comedies. Came out in 1985, directed by Dan O'Bannon, who I don't know what else he's directed. Of course, the story was partly by John Russo. Now, John Russo co-wrote the original Night of the Living Dead with George Romero. Now, a lot of people think there's a feud between Russo and Romero because they split the rights. Russo got the rights to the name Living Dead. Romero just got to do Of the Dead. But, of course, looking at his films and then what John Russo did, because I think he did like softcore porn and some other not very successful horror films. I know one of these guys wrote the original Alien also. So Return of the Living Dead, it's not a sequel, it's a standalone film, but it references the original Night of the Living Dead as a movie. Of course, it takes place July 3rd, 1984 in Louisville, Kentucky at the Unita, a medical supply warehouse, where Frank, well actually the boss is Clu Gulagher, of course from Elm Street Part 2, one other one I just watched recently but I can't remember what it was. He's the boss, sort of the long-time guy that's been there. Frank, played by James Karen, who's in Poltergeist, the guy that moved the headstones but not the bodies. He's training Freddy, the newcomer, played by Thom Mathews, Tommy Jarvis from Friday the 13th Part 6. And he tells him the story of how Night of the Living Dead, a movie, was based on a true story, but got the facts wrong. It was some toxin that got released to some corpses and they got reanimated. That toxin is the 2,4,5 Trioxin. And as he puts it, typical army fuck up, the corpses were put in containers and mistakenly got sent to the warehouse. And James Cameron's great. Like, he does this thing where he's like, you want to see him? And Freddy's like, see what? And he's like, the corpses. So they go down, they look at it. And nice aerial view looking down into this canister. This corpse looking up. And he's like, it says something like, is this thing gonna leak? And he's like, no, this is made by the army, strong steel. And he hits it, pisses out chemicals, gases them. And then we get the opening credits with one of my favorite movie themes, definitely from the 80s. Freddy's friends is a group of punks. I mean, just going through it, you have Miguel Nunez, who was in Friday the 13th Part 5. Can't remember his name on top of my head, but he played Vic, the one that killed the fat kid over a candy bar in Friday the 13th Part 5. Linnea Quigley, of course. A couple other guys, and this other woman that actually got hired because she was a prostitute. And Dan O'Bannon, not prostitute, excuse me, she was a stripper. Dan O'Bannon saw her and decided to cast her. And Freddy's girlfriend. They're waiting for him to get off work, so they decide to hang out at the cemetery. And Linnea Quigley's character, her name is Trash, she shares her fantasy of being killed by a group of old men tearing her clothes off and ripping her apart. Which turns her on to the point of doing a naked sexy dance, but it's also Linnea Quigley, so she has to be naked and everything. Frank and Freddy wake up, and I mean, this is why this movie is so original. It's a medical supply warehouse. I mean, there's like a frame with a bunch of butterflies, and like their wings are flapping. They have like a vivisection dogs, like cut in half. Their tails are wagging. They're panting. It's funny. These guys are screaming nonstop through the whole movie, like just in panic. You know, like when he goes to hit the dog, it makes like dog whimpering sounds. There's this one corpse that's already embalmed, so he's yellow. They just try cutting his head off, and I mean, everything in this movie leads to another thing. Like, they call the boss Clu Gulagher, his name's Bert. They decide to cut the body all up, and it's so funny, because they send a pickaxe through the corpse's head. They're like, you said if I destroyed the brain, it would kill him. It worked in the movie. And then Thom Mathews is like, do you think the movie lied? Well, they go down to the mortuary, thinking they can cremate it, with this guy Ernie, played by Don Calfa. Great character actor. They cremate it, the remains, because even if you sever an arm, the arm's still going to move around. But when they cremate it, the smoke goes up into the clouds, releases the trioxin, creates this rain that seeps through the ground and raises the dead. And the tagline's not on here, but one, I love this poster. That's a great horror movie poster. The original tagline was, they're back from the grave and they're ready to party. Because, it's all punks, and there's a punk soundtrack. I know one of the producers or whoever hates it. The first corpse we see come out of the ground is just a skeleton with human eyes and the mouth opens. It's like, do you wanna party? Because the original effects guy was horrible. I mean, if you watch More Brains, the documentary on this, you see some of the stuff he created, and it was bad. Like, notoriously bad. And basically, it's just this group of punks and these people at the medical supply place trying to survive, but everything that happens, it just keeps escalating. Like, because throughout the film, Freddy and Frank, they're getting pale and they're sick, so Ernie calls paramedics. Paramedics come, they're like, these guys are dead. Like, they can't figure it out. So they go out to the ambulance, and zombies attack them. These zombies run. So if anybody bitches about how zombies shouldn't run or undead don't run, they did it in this. Back in 85. And one of my favorite lines, like the first time I saw it, I crack up every time. A dispatch is going off on the radio, and they're eating the paramedics, and this one zombie picks it up and he's like, come in, dispatch. Send more paramedics. Which, like, I guess the Mandela effect in my head, it was years before seeing it for the first time, then rewatching it again. I've seen it a bunch of times since. I always remembered it as, dispatch, send more paramedics. Either way, it's still hilarious to me. It's like my favorite part of the whole movie. Of course, Trash gets eaten. She foreshadowed her own fantasy, and she was scared. And it just keeps escalating. I mean, cops come, more cops come. Eventually, the whole town is just full of zombies. I could go on and on about this movie, but I don't want to ruin everything. The effects are also great. Of course, you get like the half zombie. One punk, they're holding the door, rips a punk through, and this female zombie grabs onto his head. But she's like green and skeletal, but she has like perfect eyes. So she's like a torso and just like a little bit of her spine. So they tie her down to the table, and she looks great. Like the effects are, it's all animatronic. And, you know, this is where we get the sort of mythology of these zombies, where killing the brain doesn't do anything. They eat brains because brains is sort of like an opiate to them. Being dead hurts, and brains sort of quells it. Which, that's another thing. Obviously, I just did this and more paramedics. It's not just a joke. Like, these zombies actually talk. And I love the first real zombie that you see, which is one of the most famous zombies ever, the Tarman. He's the one that was in the canister. Because you get like this time-elapsed bit where, during the opening credits, where you just see everything melt off the corpse. He's all black and slimy and just tarry looking. But his eyes are still normal. Brains. And I think the guy that played is like a contortionist. He does this thing where it's like his muscles don't work and he like walks like this. Awesome effect. And, you know, yeah, I can go on and on. I can't praise this movie enough. It's the perfect amount of horror, fun, and entertainment, and actually funny. Humorous and funny. That's why I put it up there with Reanimator and Evil Dead 2. Of those movies, I'll probably go Evil Dead 2, Reanimator, then this. But they're all very close. Like, just because it's my third of the bunch of movies like that, I still love this movie to death. And, you know, of course, it just keeps building and building and building. And it all just comes because Frank just tapped the thing. We do get a couple scenes of this high-up military guy who's been searching for these canisters for like 14 years. And so, well, I don't really want to give away the ending. There is a nod to the original Night of the Living Dead where Ernie and Freddy's girlfriend hide out in the attic. Sort of a reference to, like, a Mr. Cooper, Night of the Living Dead. He wants to barricade himself in the basement. Ernie takes Tina, Freddy's girlfriend, up to the attic. Which I also love the effect on Thom Mathews, Freddy, when he's a zombie, you know, all pale. He's got this great look to him, like what he does with his mouth. Then when they throw the acid on him and he's got like that awful like pink reaction, looks excellent. Yeah, that's the guy from Friday 5. His name's Suicide. Miguel Nunez, his name's Spider. Another one is Scuzz. And, you know, it just, there's a lot of just like screaming and yelling and just chaotic acting, but it's all very entertaining. You know, I don't want this to be a super long review, but I don't want to leave anything out. Yeah, I'm actually not going to say the very ending. It is kind of like, take the original Night of the Living Dead ending and just escalate it to the nth degree. That's the ending to this movie. But yeah, this is a cult movie. I mean, everyone I know or that I've seen on YouTube, that, like, no one likes this movie. They love it. And I can see, first time I saw it, I was disappointed by, like, the humor. I was expecting it to be more gory. I think I was expecting more of, like, a Dawn or Day of the Dead. But then, like, years later, when I went back and watched it, you know, I had a whole new appreciation for it. You know, I would also say Dead Alive. It's not 80s, but it's the same caliber. It's not nearly as gory as Dead Alive. Fuck no. Evil Dead 2 isn't even that gory. But anyway, yeah, I can't praise this movie enough. I love it to death. And I can't recommend it enough. One of my favorite zombie movies. Super original. Effects look great. Great music. The acting is great also. Believable, likable, fun characters. Great around the board. Excellent movie. Room 237, thank you for watching.